Hockey Town, it's a place where dreams are found. We fought so many battles here, now we're the ones that they will fear. The cup resides within our town, we won't stop no letting down. The cup is ours, we're all to drink. It's our time, let's rock this ring.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Hockey Town Rundown. You're here with us, your beautiful hosts, once again, Matt, Derek, and Zach. Boys, happy Sunday. What's going on? Not all at once now. Someone go.
Woo! It's been a wonderful day. I've been working all week. I hate my life. My plant caught on fire. We got evacuated. Breathing a lot of smoke. It's been a great week. Matt, how have you been doing?
I've been doing pretty good. I haven't been putting out any fires, thank God. Yeah, it's been a pretty nice weekend. My girlfriend and I went to see Twisters last night. If you guys have not seen that movie and are thinking about watching it, absolutely phenomenal movie. I absolutely love that movie. I don't know if you guys have seen the original, but I think it tops the original. I think it was a really good movie. Definitely the best one I've seen this summer. But yeah, that's what's been going on with me. I just finished listening to our episode that we recorded earlier. I don't want to give anything away, but it is one heck of an episode. So yeah, I think everyone is going to be very excited to see that come out soon.
Well, cat's out of the bag, Matt, because the name of the person that is the special guest is down below.
And I'm looking at it right now. So, yep, there we go.
And it's in the title of this video. If you guys are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, thank you for stopping by and watching and listening to us. If you are returning, if you are new, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up. Let's get this to 30 likes for Ryan Hana and claps for Ryan Hana. Once again, I know we did it on the pre-recording, which was on Thursday. So once again, thank you so much to Ryan Hana for hopping on to our podcast. Never in a million years. If you would have told me 3.5 years ago that I started a podcast with my friends and Ryan Hana and all these other great podcasters coming on the show for our show, I wouldn't have believed you. You know, it's just pretty crazy how time has flown by, and when you have fun, especially, you know, it's all great stuff. And so very appreciative. Once again, thank you so much, Ryan Hana. Carlo's not here, but he was on the episode. And so I guess from here, let's go ahead and turn it over to the Ryan Hana interview, Q&A, whatever you want to call it. We'll see y'all on the other side. Yo, you're here with us, Carlo, Zach, and a special guest, Ryan Hana from the Winged Wheel podcast. Give it up for Ryan Hana today, everyone.
Big claps for Ryan.
The beautiful man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. You know, go ahead. Obviously, I'd be very shocked if anyone who watches, listens to us doesn't know who you are. But for those that don't know who you are, please go ahead and lay down the groundwork for them.
Really kind of you to say. I hope there are people who are sane enough to not know who I am. But my name is Ryan Hana. I'm one of the hosts of the Winged Wheel podcast. I'm really bad at doing the whole bit for our own show, but you can find us wherever you find your podcasts, YouTube, etc. If you want to look at our ugly mugs. We talk Red Wings hockey, NHL, etc. twice a week, even once a week during the off season. So, yeah, it's always good to kind of hockey, especially now that it's slowed down during the off season, have a little bit more time. So, really excited to be able to jump in and do something like this with you guys.
Yeah, no, we definitely appreciate it. Once again, claps for Ryan for
big claps, slow claps. We should actually slow the claps down for Ryan is what we should be doing.
Slow claps. Yes.
Yeah, I made you guys wait till late at night, so you'll put me to sleep if you go much slower than that.
Hey, it's no worries, you know. But Carlo, why don't you go ahead and start off with some questions like we talked about before we started recording?
For sure.
Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions about the Wings, you know, some personal questions. So Carlo, go ahead and start.
Yeah. First, obviously, we want to thank Ryan very, very much for being on the show. We're thrilled to have him on and just to get his takes and his brain and his brain power, I should say, on the state of the team and I guess where we're heading and I think the good news to come. But before we get into that, I wanted to congratulate Ryan on and the Winged Wheel podcast on an incredible milestone with 10,000 subscribers. That's huge. We're going to speed up the claps for that one for Ryan's sake. I definitely wanted to shout that out. And before we get into the Red Wings stuff, I just wanted to ask a little bit about you and the boys and the Winged Wheel pod. And you guys have been going at this a long time. I'll back up for a second because I just want to give you guys mad props and thanks because I don't want to go sappy here, but you're the reason why I started podcasting. I've been listening to you guys for a very, very long time. Big fan myself. And I just wanted to learn a little bit about you, the guys, what goes into the Winged Wheel pod, what made you start doing that? And what gave you guys the horsepower to keep on, the longevity and the consistency within your show?
Yeah, it was, you know what, we started in a time, it was 9.5-ish years ago now. We'll be coming up on a decade if myself, Brad, or Evan don't kill one another in this next half year, which, I mean, we've come close. But no, we've been going on for near a decade, and it all kind of started at a time where there wasn't a lot in the Red Wings podcast space. And we were just happened to be three meatheads who loved talking hockey and, halfway knew what we were talking about, who lived around each other. So we met up, and I always laugh at these meetups. Like, we met each other on the internet, which is not something I recommend you doing. Like, it's not a good or healthy thing to do if you want to live a long, happy life. But we survived that, and those initial conversations were basically us just kind of quizzing each other, because none of us grew up knowing each other, and within our own respective friend groups or whatever, we would have known the most about Red Wings hockey or whatever it was. And to kind of find a counterpart or a contemporary who'd be able to bounce that conversation off you, it very quickly became apparent to us that we had a shared passion, and I like to think at least a medium level of understanding of what we were talking about, and
Sure.
So for that reason we kind of stuck with each other. I don't know that we're even good at this now, but we definitely weren't at the start, and it was just the passion for Red Wings hockey and the NHL and the game. Like, all three of us grew up, in skates as early as could be, playing competitive hockey, coaching, refereeing, following the Red Wings, going back to, Brad's 1,000 years old, so he remembers, back when it was black and white. But for me, I grew up in the era of, one of my earliest memories is watching Brendan Shanahan score, and Evan probably has something earlier than that. So that like we just kind of lived and breathed this, and that's what carried us through. That was the horsepower to at least start the show, and to kind of keep it going after it became something more than a hobby was, honestly, I mean, to return the sappiness, Carlo. Like, I like that you have your Twitter handle on screen. Like, I recognize it.
Mhm.
I recognize it for a long time. I've known that
That's
every
awesome.
time I saw your tweet. Like, it's someone, you're one of those names that popped up a lot, and like, I don't know if people think we don't recognize it, but we do. So I see Drumline, and I know you, and I know kind of your takes and your opinions and how you engage with us. And I mean, that's part of the reason why I was very happy to come on the show, because of all the support you've shown over the years. But it was the listeners and the fan base, and we never thought we'd be able to say, the 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, or becoming the biggest Red Wings podcast, or every milestone felt very surreal to us, and we don't take it for granted, and we feel very appreciative of the listenership, and it's all grassroots, right? Like, there's no major media network behind us, there's no funding support, there's no advertising dollars or anything like that. So we owe everything we have to the people who have dedicated their time to engage with us, to listen, to support, to come out to events when we do events with the Red Wings and the Griffins. Like, that's the true fuel behind it now, because it, when it gets this big, like, you don't lose the passion and you don't lose the fun behind it, but the work is added. It now feels like work to a degree. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, but that never outweighs, how much appreciation and passion we have for the fans and the listeners.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Ryan, it's so funny that you talk about you don't recommend meeting strangers online. That's exactly how Carlo and I met, and I invited him to join the podcast. And it's very unfortunate. I feel your pain there for sure.
Cheerio, Zach. Cheerio.
So, hey, cheers, bud. Yeah. So, but Ryan, one thing that not a lot of people get to experience is having a podcast. That's something that we can relate on a level, right? Is that we both have a platform that we utilize to showcase our ability and our love for the game of hockey, not just for the Red Wings, right? But you don't have to go too in depth, but explain to the viewers and the listeners how much effort really goes into starting the podcast. And you guys didn't really hit the ground running right away, right? Like, where you guys started working with the Red Wings and doing things with Grand Rapids. So kind of talk about those things, like what goes into it, the behind the scenes, like how much work do you actually put into it?
Yeah. Thinking about it makes me sad, and I'm about to message my wife to see if I can't get a beer delivery up to the studio. But it's quite a bit. I would, like, honestly, it's as much work as anyone wants it to be, is my honest answer to that. Like, not every podcast in the world has to be the biggest podcast in the world, and not every podcast has to pump out, X number of episodes at every interval or what have you. But whatever you choose, and if you're someone who's listening who wants to do it, just do something that's fun for you, because it's not a rewarding space. It, Statistically speaking, inherently, like the churn is unreal, the grind is unreal, and not like anyone who makes a podcast is this like martyr or some superhero. It's a podcast. We're meatheads talking into a microphone. Like, are we
Yeah.
making the world any better? Probably not. But it's like, it's not traditional media. The infrastructure is not there really to support it. It's getting a bit better. A silver lining of the pandemic was a lot of the technology. Like, for example, what you guys are using to record with me today, I'll tell you, like, pre-pandemic, the options were very limited. The tech input was much higher. It was way more finicky. You needed so much more work pre and post. So it gets easier every day. The solutions are there. But it's still not what people don't tune in on podcasts naturally. Think of your average median, voter in America, for example. They probably have just now teetered towards understanding what the word podcast is in like the last 5 years. But even then, do they know how to tune in? Do they do that on their phone, or do they just turn their car radio on? Like, that's
Right.
Hate to
Yeah,
say
fair
it, but like Spotify on someone's phone is way more ubiquitous than this. So all that to say, it's the behind the scenes is a lot of work for us personally, because of the size of our show and the commitment we have to the fans and the content churn. But I just want to caution anyone to say it doesn't have to be like that. You can have fun with it, and anything else that comes after that is gravy. That's a bonus. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't hit the ground with 5 million downloads and all of that. Like, it's a mix of a lot of different things. And if I could put it in a bottle and sell it, I'd do that, and I could quit my day job.
Yeah.
There you go. True,
Yeah,
true.
That's always the pipe dream, right? One of these days, you hope that this hobby of yours can be your dream job, right? Like, I thoroughly enjoy sitting in front of, believe it or not, a camera that I had to spend money to get to talk in front of my friends and you, Ryan, for essentially for free, and taking time. Very thankful for you taking time out of your day too, right? But in an essence, right? Like, we do this for fun because we enjoy it. We love talking about hockey, and we want to be surrounded by people who also do the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, thank you for going in depth in that, because people do tend to ask me, how much time do you spend on the podcast? It does take quite a bit of time, but you have to enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis to make it run easy flowing. So yeah, great response to that, Ryan. Thank you. Carlo.
I was just going to say the passion runs deep. It's pretty incredible the amount of passion Red Wings fans have. I mean, there's like 17 Red Wing podcasts now, and it's nothing but love to every single one of them. But it just goes to show you how deep that runs. But no, I agree, Zach. It was a great answer from Ryan, and really well spelled out. So what do you guys think? Should we get into some Red Wings talk or what?
Yeah, let's bury Ryan a little bit here.
Let's get into it. So I want to start it off just with asking you about, the most recent, obviously the additions, the subtractions. What's your take on that today? I mean, I feel like the subtractions happened, the additions happened, and everybody kind of had a very quick opinion and kind of snapped real quick in terms of having a judgment. But as we sit today, where are you at with all of it?
I was really happy to see that Steve Yzerman kind of said in his press conference he feels very similar as he did last year, because that's kind of where I landed, and not because everything is the exact same. Like, I think there's opportunity for things to go a bit differently for Detroit. It's a little bit up to chance, it's a little bit up to goaltending. It certainly won't be pushed over the hill in a positive way by defense. We know that as it stands right now. But when Yzerman said that, I was like, okay, good, because that's kind of where I am, and that doesn't make people happy. And I'll never not say something on the show because it doesn't make people happy. Like, we'll say it anyways, but then you kind of get killed for it. And it's like that's just the reality of what the Red Wings did. Like, they subtracted a lot of offense, but you know what? They added a lot of offense.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything really on defense, but they also get a full season of Simon Edvinsson, and to the tune of full seasons. You now get a full season of Kane, who says that he feels even better with an off season of work. And he's kind of won a little bit of trust based on the fact that he was his only believer pre-contract with Detroit.
Fair.
They added other options at goaltending. Are any of them like game breaker, Sorokin, Shesterkin, Vasilevsky level? No, but where were you going to get that from? So you added some other options. The defense, other than that, still has you're hoping that Sherratt Seider is like the second version of that I saw last year compared to the first version of that, and for as long as they need him there. Probably Derek Lalonde is thinking closer to 82 games because you don't want to put that pressure on Edmondson. My personal bet is that Edmondson, rises the ranks and probably at least talent and ability wise could be a first pairing defenseman on Detroit by the end of the season. I don't know if they'll necessarily put them together because you need to split the talent up.
Yeah.
But who is Gustafsson going to stick as your second pair right D? Or are you going to have to put Petrie there? And that was a problem last year. So there's opportunities to continue to excel. Like if the offense clicks in a way and they continue to kind of outshoot their averages, and I don't think that's impossible.
Mhm.
Like Tarasenko won't play defense, but he'll add offense. Like that could continue to be a positive for Detroit. It could also regress to the mean. Goaltending, I think you're looking at the floor on balance of what they got last year as what you can get this year. It could get better, and that's some points in the standings. Defense, you're kind of banking on maybe another move being made here and a lot on Edmondson. So I think the range of outcomes for this season is honestly the exact same range of outcomes that I thought they might have had last season. Maybe a bit more optimistic as we saw what they could do last season. And I think Raymond will take a step. And if Seider can get some relief, he might too.
Yeah. Well said. Makes a lot of sense.
It's funny that you brought up Steve Yzerman and the defense and potentially making another move. You brought up in one of your most recent episodes, Ryan, I believe is the one before your most recent. You brought up Steve Yzerman potentially being in a spot to make a mid-season move. I tried to do a little digging on some of the recent moves or the moves that he made when he was with Tampa Bay to see how many trades he did between, towards the end of off season, like training camp, to December, right? And so there really weren't too many to go off. So in your opinion, how likely is it that Steve is going to make that move in training camp or even during the regular season before like December or January?
Oh, yeah. I mean, likelihood is low for multiple reasons. Like it's the NHL. It just doesn't happen a lot. Two, Detroit's a little bit tied up in terms of what they can do just because of, what players are you going to move? Well, I mean, not your core, and who has the clauses in their contracts, and
Yeah.
it makes it all very unlikely. The reason I think Steve Yzerman has the potential to do it is because I think, they have the assets and the prospects. So they have draft picks still. They have high-end prospects. They don't have room for prospects in the future. And I've kind of been beating the drum for a while of, not every prospect's going to land, statistically speaking. Think of all of Detroit's first-round picks that are currently sitting in Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be great if all of them hit, but I mean, odds say not all of them will. You look at guys who are, maybe the more Willander tier of prospects. They have a lot of value because there's potential. So all that to say, Yzerman could make a big swing and, pay a premium in future assets to make something happen. But yeah, I don't want to say that it's a likely thing. It's just difficult in the NHL, and it's difficult with Detroit's cap situation. It's not a popular thing to say out loud, but you'd rather not force something and you'd rather just wait it out a year because this year's not going to be a cup run regardless.
Yeah, that's very true. So you mentioned prospects, and obviously we know that there's several promising prospects currently in the pipeline, which is great. But in your opinion, who do you believe has the potential to make the biggest impact? I know this is going to be a loaded question, but I'm just curious on and if there's one or two of them, because there is quite a few. But who do you think the one is that makes that big impact in the next couple of years? And how do you feel the organization's handling the development of said player?
Biggest impact, if you're looking at the next couple of years, I think that's Nate Danielson's kind of spot. I think he edges out Axel Sandin Pellikka there. I think he edges out MBN there. And that's a premium position thing. if Nate Danielson didn't show so well in last year's camp, and if he didn't have such a strong season, especially after going up the Portland Winterhawks, I might think otherwise. But he's been, the guy they thought they were drafting so far since they picked him. And Detroit has not much of anything substantial for the future behind Dillon at center.
Yeah.
JT Compher is your second line center. I really like JT Compher. I'm a big JT Compher guy. I don't think he's necessarily the best centerman to have on a Kane line, for example, and that's going to be difficult for Detroit because then you're pulling one of Raymond or DeBrincat off that first line with Larkin. So, Detroit's thin at center, and they've been thin at center since, God, I feel like since we started our show.
Fair.
So by virtue of Danielson being a good prospect who is likely to land, he will move the needle. Even if Nate Danielson ends up being a really good third line center, he's still going to be the biggest impact that Detroit will have had since obviously Seider and Raymond. So there's an outside argument for Sandin Pellikka because I think he's a special offensive talent from the blue line, but he's not a big frame like Seider, so you have to be a bit more careful bringing him into the fold. And MBN, I'm a big fan of Michael Brenzek, Nygaard, and but just like the positional premium of Danielson, I think gives him the edge.
Yeah, fair point. Awesome. Right up. Thanks, man.
Just off the rip, if you had to select a fellow prospect, not Simon Edmondson, Johansson, Berggren, players that are supposed to make the team or you expect them to, right? Who are you selecting to fit in the bottom six if there was a spot open and they won the spot in training camp?
This year, I honestly, Mazur and Casper have shown more than enough already to make it, but I really think Danielson could have played on the team last year. I think he could have. He surprised me at camp, and I think he could have made the team. So it's really hard not to pick Carter Mazur, who I think is going to be a pro. I think he's going to be a guy for Detroit. And Casper, I mean, we saw what he did once he really turned it on last year. I've probably been guilty of saying this, have said, he was, maybe a little bit slow to start or was the development path was unsure. I think he developed like a normal prospect. I think he needed time to adjust to the pro game. And, it's normal. We should stop kind of pigeonholing guys just because they don't, fire it off the rip, like you said, Zach, September, October. Those guys could have been such an easy answer. But yeah, for impact on the roster, I think Danielson could have been it.
Yeah. He did have a hell of a camp.
Yeah.
And I mean, just his season alone, makes a lot of sense. He looks really, really good. So burning question for me is about Berggren. I've been asking this question quite a bit, and Berggren on the third line, does he crack 45 points? Berggren on the fourth line, does he crack 30 points? What's your take on Berggren, that type of scenario? Is that possible for him? And what do you, I guess beyond that, I think the top six is kind of set. What is that bottom six really going to look like ideally for the Red Wings, in your opinion?
Ideally, it remains to be seen. There's a lot of NHL players there. You have the Rask Cop Fisher line, which they're going to probably want to keep together. That's optimizing two players like Rasmussen and Cop. That's shown to be where they can be the most effective.
Yeah.
Berggren can produce, and I think barring anything funny happening with his contract or unless he gets dealt, I think he can produce, but it's probably not going to come so much from depth 5-on-5 minutes, somewhat, of course, but the power play is where he'll live and die. But I think that's part of the plan for Detroit because those favorable deployments play into his strengths and kind of eliminate some of his weaknesses. He's starting in the offensive zone some more, and then you're getting the most out of Berggren, which is what you want. He's not going to come in and be a top six forward this year, up and down the ice, but in terms of offensive production, you can deploy him in a way where you can utilize his talents, and we know what those are. What's the ideal? I mean, if the top six is really holding up the offense, then you don't really mind the kind of roster projections that you have right now with a little bit more of the shutdown. You're not getting 5 goals scored against you, bottom six that you're working with. So I think you kind of have to see how the season's playing out before you say what's ideal. If the Red Wings really regress to the mean in terms of scoring, then you might want to be deploying Berggren a little bit more. Is anyone going to get called up because of injury? That's another question.
Yeah, true.
And your defense needs support too. part of the reason why goaltenders in Detroit fizzle out with fewer games than maybe people think they should is because they just get shelled and high danger chances. And even if Detroit is really protecting a specific area of the ice, like these goalies are getting worked. And so team defense is important, and you need to buy some time and space for Mo Seider and God knows Simon Edmondson too. So it's kind of a non-answer, Carlo. I'm sorry, but like you
No, I feel
just
you.
kind of
I
have to
feel
see
you.
what version of the team you're getting.
Yeah. I
Carlo,
like what you said though too, but because it is kind of balanced. I mean, like you said, if the top two lines really hold true to be that offensive production, you have that shutdown line with Raskop and Fisher, which I'm a big fan of that line. I love that line. But they did a really nice job for a good amount of times last season. That fourth line, depending on how I hate calling it a fourth line because it could be deployed as a top line or a shutdown line or whatever. But yeah, I think there is a balance. There's a bit of harmony, but it's going to take some time, obviously, to really judge that. So that's fair. I totally with you there.
Not to put, no, you're okay. Not to put too much pressure on Berggren, regardless of whatever line he's on. It does seem like more than likely it's going to be in the bottom six, right? But is possibly the expectation for him to almost be that line driver? Because you look at the potential pairings that he has on the fourth line. If that's where you put him, it's Joe Veleno and Tyler Mott. He's probably got the most lethal shot on that line, probably the most point production player on that line. So is that potentially what the Red Wings are trying to do, is make him that line driver on that fourth line?
I don't know necessarily that I go that far. It kind of depends on what your definition of line driver is. If you mean like most potent offensive potential, then yeah, sure. But in terms of, the facilitation of the play from exiting the zone, transferring the puck up the ice, distribution, like I think that's where you start to run into parts of Berggren's game that the team doesn't like the most, and he and the team didn't really see eye to eye on. Defense is not really kind of considered in terms of line driving, so we'll leave that out of the equation. But I think once you're getting that far down in the lineup where you're getting to that fourth line, fourth line, you're not really finding line drivers, so to speak. It's more about finding the right mix of guys who can kind of you're trying to moneyball it essentially. Like, in the aggregate, can we get the puck up the ice? Can we break into the offensive zone? Can we not get hemmed in our own zone? Can someone distribute the puck to some degree of efficacy? Is someone there with half a brain cell to know when to hang back so we don't get beat with an odd man rush? That's kind of what you're working with. If you have line drivers in your fourth line, you're probably like the Tampa Bay Lightning or Colorado Avalanche.
True,
We're
true
having
ones.
different conversations.
Yeah, and I was mostly speaking on the point production side. You're right. Yeah. So, that's because, like I said, you look at the Veleno and you look at the Tyler Mott, so that's what I think the Red Wings are trying to do, is replicate a Daniel Sprong, but hopefully a little bit better, right? On that fourth line, you don't have to healthy scratch him towards the end of the season, or at least fingers crossed. So I got a wicked question for you, Ryan. This is just kind of me in my head. You can agree, you can disagree, but just kind of speaking out of my head, when Steve Yzerman took over this team in 2019, you had 3 seasons under the Blashill era, right? Hiring Lalonde in 2022, we're now entering in that 3rd season with the Lalonde era, right? So kind of look at it as we're in the 2nd chapter. We're kind of almost entering into that 3rd chapter after this season, the 2025 season, where Steve Yzerman, if you add up the Lucas, Raymond, and Mo Seider contracts, Red Wings are going to have hopefully close to $30 million in cap space. At least you hope, right? Tickle my fancy a little bit. So going into that 3rd chapter, is Steve Yzerman's plan really to finally say in his tenure, it's time to make regular pushes for the playoffs and potentially make that Stanley Cup push? Because you look at it in that sections, right? Is next season finally that push? Because you look at the free agent targets that are out there, some of the contracts that are coming off the books too. So thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, it's less about how long Yzerman's been here, more about how old Dylan Larkin is, because he's the first kind of linchpin to how good your team can be. And if he ages out, or you don't think you can be competitive in his window, then what's the point of him being on the team? Right? So obviously he's on the team. He's going to be on the team for a long time, and they're not going to trade him. And so you have to start to try to be competitive over this next phase of his career before he, turns, let's say 32 or whenever you think, a first line center becomes not effective enough to be a first line center anymore. It varies player to player, but yeah, you're working with Larkin's window. So, for all the criticism that Steve Yzerman gets, and I've definitely levied some his way, he came in with God knows the knot, the tangle, the mess of contracts. No lottery luck. Still turn that into Seider and Raymond. Sorry, I shouldn't say no lottery luck. Almost statistically, the worst lottery luck you can get. Still turned it into Seider and Raymond. And we love Casper, we love Danielson, we love Sandin Pelech, all these guys, but they could have been different players with lottery luck. That other teams got, like San Jose tanked once, and now they have a Macklin Celebrini. It's tough to see that and say Yzerman's going to follow a set game plan. So I think the regular pushes have to come in Larkin's window, and that's easier said than done. It might not be possible. Maybe you can't add a Marner. Maybe you can't add a Rantanen. Maybe you don't, get the kind of offense that you need, or you can't really flesh out the defense, or, one of Edmondson or Danielson or Sandin Pelech just doesn't turn into a player. They just fizzle out. That's all very within the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And, other GMs, that'll happen to them, and then they have the lottery luck to fall back on, or they had the better team that they inherited to fall back on. Yzerman has nothing. His safety net is all he's built up, and so he's going to want to make pushes, and it's not guaranteed to happen. But yeah, you're looking at this phase of Larkin's career, and that's why they're kind of building up to it incrementally, because one, that's kind of the only thing you can do, and two, they have to be ready to go if they luck out, if they get a superstar free agent, if finally the cards come up in their favor.
Yeah, it kind of seems like they're, stacking the deck a little bit with what they can for. That's a good way to look at it, for when that opportunity does come, if it does come, to strike on that, and then you have those pieces around it. That's a really good way to look at that. I got a question. We're going to back up a little bit. We were talking about Lalonde. I guess we're not backing up that much, but talking about Derek Lalonde, and I guess going into his third year. What do you expect to see systematically change, if at all? Do you expect to see them deploy a new system? Because we all seen it last year. I think I was pretty hard on him online too. So I was hard on him.
You were.
But that dump, I guess I understand what a dump and chase is, being kind of the result of a broken play. I know that's not a deployable system. Hey guys, go out there and dump the puck. I get it. It's more of a result of a broken play. But with all that happened last year, and we saw many times of just the defensive collapses and whatnot, are you expecting to see a system be deployed a little bit differently this year? And if so, what do you think?
Real quick, Ryan, before you answer that too, just to add on top of that, I do see quite a bit of people on Twitter or social media in general saying that, bringing up the Seider example, right? His deployment issue. And it seems like majority of the time he is out there, he is just dumping the puck. So yeah, sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't expect any major changes for two reasons. One, you still are largely working with the talent that you had last year. And two, it's still the same coach, and it's kind of the formula you have with the talent that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily, I don't fully agree or believe that a dump and chase is always the result of a broken play. I think there's something to be said about, depending on the opponent you have. If you have the speed and the ability to forecheck, and you have guys who are great at puck retrievals, it's a move, and you can't always dance into the zone. Especially as Steve Yzerman's doing it right now. Teams are building up sizey blue lines, just giant freaks with long reach. It is hard to break in and do. And if they're going to try to run, whatever you want to think, a neutral zone trap or whatever, you work around it in ways that are less sexy than Kane dangling around everyone. That aside, I think Derek Lalonde has the same hand, just with some different flavors of what he had last year. So I don't really think you're going to see a ton different. I expect even more emphasis on team defense, because the additions they made aren't even good defensive players necessarily. They're just maybe less bad than Gostisbehere was. So the deployment for Seider was an issue, but an extreme example of that, like this is way, 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 way bigger. Think about Connor McDavid in the playoffs playing so many minutes, and the guy was gassed and hurt. And you have to. He's your best player. That's your best chance of winning. That was Detroit's thing on a much smaller scale. You have to play Seider in those defensive zone starts and all those minutes, and not give him the luxury of playing like just a normal average game, so he can shine as the offensive two-way defenseman, I should say, that he is, because that was your only chance of not getting shelled 9 goals that night.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
Is that going to change? Yeah, maybe Edmonton will relieve it a bit, or maybe the addition of Tyler Mott or having the third line of Kopp, Fisher, Rask together all season will help that. But I don't know that you're stylistically going to see a lot different from Detroit.
That was going to be my follow-up question to you, was with the additions that they made, Simon Edvinsson or Eric Gustafsson, anyone really, do you think that changes anything for Moritz Seider's deployment that he received last year going into this year? Is there really going to be that much of a difference? Probably not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in Simon Edvinsson, and probably some of that is just some residual like inertia from the how Seider came to the scene.
Yeah,
but I think like without holding Edmonton to those lofty expectations, I like the net ad or the relative ad when you're coming from 0 or less than 0, which is what Detroit has on defense. It's going to feel big with Edvinsson, no pun intended. I think he is going to move the needle for them, and if the needle is still way far off what team average defense is, that's still fine because it's better than 0. So I think Edvinsson can make a big difference, but at how much at the end of the day, I stop short of saying I put those expectations on him, because I think that's a lot for not technically, he's not eligible for the Calder anymore, but in all reality, a rookie.
Yeah.
So this one's more about just the locker room. I know an article came out recently with Derek Malone talking about how he loves where his locker room is at right now. And speaking of the locker room, and one of the big things that is probably going to start getting on people's minds are those alternate captains. What are you guys thinking on that? In terms of who's donning the A? I've heard a couple of very good takes that we can discuss for sure, but I'm curious where you guys go with that, or where you go at least in terms of who gets that A. If not, maybe who's getting both those A's? Are we going to see 2 new A's? I don't know.
This is always kind of a fun thing to think about for a second to me, but the answer always ends up being boring. I think the team just goes with like the Perron of the day.
Yeah.
So like the Kopp and Sherratt, like that's likely what you're going to see.
Yeah.
I would like to see, and I think the team could maybe think this way, if one or both of Seider and Raymond sign 8-year deals, 7 or 8 year deals. I mean, part of the reward for doing that should be, okay, you're buying in long term, then we're rewarding you long term because you're the future of this team. So here's an A on your jersey. I could see that for Seider especially, but that hinges on it being long term deals. I don't know, not really. It's an important thing. I don't want to diminish it, and the team thinks it's important. It's important in the room, but you'd be surprised how often NHL coaches in the rooms are like, the biggest leader in the room isn't a guy with an A. He honestly doesn't even talk at intermission. It's this guy who, plays 9 minutes a night, but we're nothing without him. He's such a glue guy in the room. So yeah. I think it's the least fun answer is probably going to be the answer, like the Sherratt Kopp kind of thing. But I would like to see one of Mo or Lucas get it.
What do you think about the room right now? I mean, there's obviously with the new additions we have some big subtractions, obviously, especially with Ghost and Perron. But I think there are some pretty interesting additions that came in that have obviously veteran presence. Hopefully they bring some leadership skills. I'm kind of pumped about the amount, like you brought up a good point. Like just because the person's not wearing an A doesn't mean they have the attributes or the characteristics of the A or that leadership. And I really feel like Steve Yzerman's done a good job at packing that room full of people who could all technically wear an A realistically. So how are you feeling about the state of the room with the players, the personnel, and where that team is right now, and how they're going to perform with all that said?
Yeah, I think you're seeing this team play for each other. Like this team achieved more than was projected for them, and I think that's a really cool thing in the NHL. It's not easy to do.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing them kind of take that first step, shooting percentage be damned, regression to the mean, or are they going to do anything next year with a stronger Atlantic be damned? Like, this team believes that they can win, and they've done it now when people were saying that they likely weren't going to. So I think you're seeing like a mini version of what you've seen with the Detroit Lions in the NFL, and Detroit kind of has that spirit to it. So
Yeah.
it's really easy for that kind of thing to build in the fan base, but it happens in the room too. So these guys play for each other. It's really easy to do when you have stories like Patrick Kane coming in and, he kind of electric hockey town. It's really easy to do when you have Lucas Raymond just putting the team on his back at the end of last season and
Incredible.
him emerging. And Mo Seider has, played 82 games, 3 seasons in a row, and just been an absolute workhorse for the team. Like, there's a lot to rally around, and it's not just in the stands. I think Derek Malone's good to point out that this room is in a great place, because when you're trying to be one of those, greater than the sum of your parts teams, you absolutely need that. And frankly, even if you're a good team on paper, you need to have a good room. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Fair point.
Real quick, thoughts on Vladimir Tarasenko, probably the biggest free agent acquisition that the Detroit Red Wings got in free agency, right? Outside of Patrick Kane, even though he was technically still with the team, never went to free agency. Vladimir Tarasenko, what is the biggest, the biggest worry that you have for him outside of the defensive woes that he does bring, right? Is it the possibility that he gets injured? We're looking at a player who's coming off of a Stanley Cup run. You don't get that long of a summer break, but enough to where hopefully it recovers the body, right? And who knows what kind of injuries they sustained through that cup run, but what are your biggest worries with a Vladimir Tarasenko, if you have any?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily that I have worries. You talked about the lack of a defensive game, or is he necessarily the kind of player who uses the frame the way the teams would want him to anymore? Probably not. But maybe is the team able to support his offense or facilitate his offense down the middle, right? Are they going to be able to find the chemistry to get the most out of Vladimir Tarasenko? It's already kind of a question with Patrick Kane at points last year. You got the best out of Patrick Kane for the most part when he played with Larkin. So it's hard to do that all year. And I mean, you certainly don't want a first line with aging wingers on both sides. So with Tarasenko, it's just making sure that he can have the support down the middle, or maybe come from the other wing in Kane, but to make sure that you can get the most out of him offensively. Because there's a trade-off to him. The same way there's a trade-off to Kane. Kane's not going to engage in a board battle, let alone win one. Like, that's just not the player he is. He never was, and he's older now, and maybe he'll be stronger in the season when he has more time to kind of rehabilitate. But that's a trade-off, and you have 2 of those, and if they end up being on the same line, like, you're going to need to find the right chemistry down the middle at center. Is that JT Compher? That's the Red Wings' hope. Is it a guarantee? I would say no. So if you had to pick out something, I would say it's that.
I firmly believe Patrick Kane just wanted a healthy offseason for the first time in a long time, just so that way he can go after Connor Bedard after that shoulder elbow hit that he laid on him last season. So I do think he wants to get in some board battles this season, Ryan. So, but no, that's a really good point. Yeah, I don't think that there's really too much to worry about Tarasenko. I think the most is probably just injury, right? At that point, outside of the defensive woes, at least I think for me, that's probably my biggest worry. But kind of going more into Tarasenko, is this someone, he signed a 2-year deal, Patrick Kane, 1-year deal. If Patrick Kane does not come back after this season, could Tarasenko possibly be someone that you could see getting an A? And I know that's looking into the future, but is that someone that could fit that mold?
Yeah, maybe. I think it kind of just depends on how he fits in the room.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first answer that comes to mind. I think you can only go with so many guys who are newer before I really start to say like your core is your core, right? And so you don't want it to just be Larkin. You want Seider and or Raymond to have something. But I think it's perfectly possible.
Good response. Yeah, for sure. Carlo?
So for me, just to kind of, I think this is my last one that I have, is just the burning question on Raymond and Seider contracts. Are you on the side of an 8-year deal, 7-8 year deal, or are you on the side of a bridge deal. I know you guys have discussed this a lot. I think I'm just asking to see if you guys are kind of standing pat or if you're standing pat on what you guys are thinking. But if you want to explain that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, the preference will always be for an 8-year deal, like the maximum length contract you can give. There's a few simple kind of notions behind that. It's pretty universal in the NHL with the current cap system. When you have a young star who's getting better, the longer you can sign them for, the better that contract will age because the cap's going to go up. They'll continue to improve. You're just going you pay a premium in term, and then the player in return gives you back, a little bit less money each year. So it saves you money on the cap. So that's generally what the best kind of course of action is with the star players like that when you have an opportunity to sign them long term. It takes two to tango though, and the players want to do it. The team retains control. They're restricted free agents, so they have the most leverage they'll ever have with these players. But these young stars, they know their worth, and they might want a bridge. The cap is going up more dramatically now than it does on average because we had such a flat cap during the COVID years, and it's just now jumping. So it's in their best interest to take a shorter bridge deal because there's going to be more money to go around with a higher salary cap the next time their deal comes up, and getting a contract closer to unrestricted free agency while you're still closer to your athletic prime. That's the sweet spot where you're going to make the most money. It's bad business for teams to do that. Case in point, look at Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, etc. Like they got everything they wanted and more from the Leafs, who got nothing in return, and infinity dollars were tied up in like 3 or 4 players. So I'm a fan of the 7-8 year, pretty much as long as you can go. Don't walk them right to unrestricted free agency. Like that would be a really tough scene. Is it the end of the world? No. Is it as ideal as the long-term deals, like a 7-8 year deal? No. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It would be much preferable for the team to have a long-term deal. But if you have a bridge, you buy yourself short-term flexibility because that'll be a lower cap hit, and you can do more with the team in that time. But the question of what number are you going to pay them for their next contract is going to come sooner than you'd want. So it's kind of you want it, and I hesitate to say it's 7 or 8 deal or bust, 7 or 8 year deal or bust for Yzerman because if the player doesn't want it, then they want a bridge. Financially speaking, that's the most prudent way and course of action for them to do. So I think with Raymond, it's the bigger priority to get him long term than Seider. I think Seider is less of a risk bridging because I think I'm speaking in generalities, and you can never be certain, but I think Raymond has way, way, way more to him that we still haven't seen. And that's not a knock on Seider. It's just Seider has already shown us so much,
Right. Yeah. I'm with you there. I think Raymond's going to have another massive, massive step out this year. I'm hoping so. I'm very wishful thinking, but I really do think his clutch gene did get activated towards the end of last season. I think we're going to see some pretty miraculous stuff from him. So I'm really pumped about that.
You don't have to go too deep into this, Ryan. Do you think that there is an opportunity for Lucas Raymond eventually in his career to be a 100-point player?
Yeah. I think there's a non-zero chance for sure. I think he has the tools for it. His scoring is going up, so that goes in his favor too. The team needs to be a lot better around him, though. I think 100-point players almost always have like other superstars, like multiple of them. So you're hard pressed to find like a casual 100-point player unless they're a generational talent that is on a somewhat stacked team offensively. But I think he has a chance to do it for sure. I'm not going to go out and put money on it, but I think it's perfectly possible.
You're a betting man, just like our other host, Matt Leslie. Then you can join him on that little parlay that he's been working on all summer long.
All summer long. That's so good.
I'm like, what is it in the Marvel movies? I'm like Red Soul. Like I all my friends ask me for hockey tips, and I give it to them, but I never bet myself.
Yeah.
So the moment I put money down, it's just gonna go away from me. Like I can't have what other people seek, but I can give you guidance to do it. So that's my curse. I should probably start charging a commission to them.
I was just gonna say, man, you got to be on commission for that for sure.
Bookie Ryan Hana at your service.
That's right. I need some baseball bats and guys who are bigger than me.
That's right. Pay up. That's hilarious.
Well, yeah, we can start wrapping up here. I guess my final question is, who outside of, I guess maybe Lucas Raymond, since we just talked about him and how we think that there's an unseen territory in his skill set, right? So to you, Ryan, who do you think is the biggest dark horse this season on the Detroit Red Wings to not necessarily have that breakout season, but better than what we expected?
I'm going to go back to Simon Edvinsson here. We know what Larkin is. We know what Raymond can be. I think DeBrink it with a better season is still going to be like within range of what we think he can be. I'm going to go to Simon Edvinsson. He's dark horse is the right way to put it, because it's, again, you shouldn't put those expectations on him. But I think it'll be, if he kind of does what I think he has the capacity to do, at least by the end of the season, we'll see just the big sigh of relief of what adding even one more strong player on the blue line can do for this team. So, not that fun of an answer, but yeah, I think Simon Edvinsson is probably the most to categorize as a dark horse.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one. I guess maybe my next one would maybe be Albert Johansson, which, real quick, rapid fire question, over under 40 games for Albert Johansson this season.
I'll say under right now, just because of how many roster players they have. If something changes before the season starts with injury or trade or what have you, then maybe that'll differ. But for now, I'll say under.
Okay. Yeah. I think his main gig this season, if he's not in a starting position, his obligation or duty should be, or his goal should be, to beat someone out and earn that spot. So, yeah, good answer. Yeah. Carlo, do you have a rapid fire question real quick? And then
rapid fire question. I know we got 3 goalies right now, 1A, 1B. We don't really, we can figure out who 1C is once we discuss the 1A and the 1B, but who's your 1A? Who's your 1B? Obviously things could change, granted.
Yeah. Oh, it's tough. It's tough because I really like Lyon. I'm going to go Talbot just because he's done it.
I knew I liked Ryan.
I'll go Talbot 1A, Lyon 1B. I think Husso is either. Yeah, it's hard to pitch. I talked to Ville Husso, and he's really, no one's more pissed off and annoyed and beat up about being injured than he is.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's just hard to shake the injury train thought from your mind with Ville Husso, but until he gets a stretch of games in, you just can't count on that. And he looked okay at points last year, but for a lot of last year that he did play too, he didn't look good at all. Yeah. So Ville Husso could just come back and have a much better return to form and just shake all that up. But for now, I'm going to go Talbot, Lyon 1A, 1B.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you during your spiel, but yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm kind of a Talbot believer. I liked his overall numbers. I liked what he did last season. I'm not expecting him to play 60 games. That's not ideal, right? But the goal here is to minimize a little bit more than what we had to utilize Alex Lyon for, right? I think Alex Lyon could be a serviceable 1B. And yeah, I feel bad for Husso. I'm just not very confident. I don't think a lot of fans are very confident that he can bounce back from not just last season, but even the season before that. Granted, the team as a whole really didn't give him much to work off of. Carlo, you use the spiel all the time. You could put in prime Dominik Hasek in there, and this defense would still allow him to get 5 goals scored on him. So,
well, that was last year was rough. Last year was rough. They definitely didn't hand out any favors to Ville Husso. That's a fact. But if hey, you never know though, man. If he comes back and he gets that stretch of games because of whatever, something happens, and he very well could, he very well could. Hopeful thinking. But I am totally aligned with Ryan's 1A, 1B, and Ville. We hope you can get back to the form, man. We're waiting for it, baby. Let's go.
Sorry, I'm not a Ville Husso hater. I love you, man. If you are watching this, please start.
Nothing but love. Nothing but love.
I want all the goalies to be healthy. I want everyone to start. I want this team.
I want to start all 3 goalies. I'm just joking. I'm just kidding.
We can make
but
it.
No,
happen.
that was my last one, man. That was my last cue.
Yeah, I think we're good. Ryan, claps.
Big claps.
You
He
made it all the
through.
way through hearing our voices.
Appreciate it, guys. No, it's yours are just as soothing and or as grating as the two that I usually deal with. No, you guys do a great job. I appreciate you having me.
Right
You're
on,
making me
Ryan.
blush.
We love it, man. Thank you very much again. And folks, you know where to find this guy. Wing Wheel Podcast. Nothing but love for those guys. Big part of the reason of why we do what we do. And we look forward to many chats in the future, hopefully with these guys. And with that said, let's go Red Wings.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. And we'll see y'all here in a little bit. And we're back. That was very quick, wasn't it? Boys, once again, claps for Ryan. If Carlo was here, he would request a slow clap. But honestly, boys, quick thoughts, opinions on what Ryan Hana had to offer onto the show today and to the watchers and the viewers, listeners.
I mean, from what I saw, I was pretty happy that it looked like his wife actually brought him that beer. So
that was really cool. Yeah, I was like,
when he just showed up, I was like, nice, you got it.
That is the perk of having an in-home studio. Yep.
Yeah. Other than that, yeah, all of it was my favorite part. Right? It was just a surreal moment for me. But I think the best thing that I took away from having Ryan Hana on this was the question I asked him, how much time actually goes into not only just one of the largest hockey podcasts in the network of hockey, but in general, right? How much time and effort goes into it, and just kind of letting the people know that it's not easy. It's not the most rewarding thing to do, but if you love something enough, go ahead and do it. Take that chance. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Like I said in the pre-recording, we pay to do this. We don't get paid at all. So we just really enjoy hockey and talking amongst ourselves and interacting with you guys, the watchers and the listeners. So that was probably my favorite part, was his response to that. And, just getting an understanding of, when you have done it for so long and, in the position that they're in, how much effort it takes to get there. So I really do appreciate him for hopping on once again. I can't say that enough, honestly. Big takeaways from that though, that you heard from Ryan?
Yeah, no, I mean, we all really appreciate having him on. I really wish I could have been on there. You guys recorded right after my bedtime, so that's okay. That's all that he really had available, so that's totally fine. We appreciate him hopping on as always. Yeah, it's just really crazy to think about. Like, I definitely echo what you said earlier, Zach. Like, I never would have thought I would be in the position that I'd be part of a podcast that has grown to the size it has now. And it's not even been 2 years yet for us. We started this like early 2023. So, the growth from back in January when, Zach sent me a text is like, hey, I got this crazy kooky idea. You want to start a podcast with me? I was like, oh man, you read my mind. I was thinking about doing that too. And now here we are. We've got, he's really like a legend in Red Wings media for sure. Like, I was a little, I don't know if I could say surprised, because, podcasting, it is like not a traditional source of media, but, for all three of us, and Carlo included, this is how we get our Red Wings news mostly. Like, for me, like listening to the Wing Wheel podcast, that's like how I, consumed like Red Wings media. And, after every game, I would go back and, hear the thoughts on what the Red Wings did well, what they didn't do well, what's going on in the greater hockey world. Like, that's where I got my news from. So yeah, he's definitely a big legend of the game for sure. Like, I think about like all three of us, we used to just like watch the Red Wings games in college, and we just, we'd screw around, we'd have some brews. We were young back then and had no clue what the future holds. And those guys, they're hitting the ground running, and they've been doing their thing for, what's it been, almost 10 years now. I think next year will be a decade. So yeah, they've been going for a long time. So yeah, it's really special to get someone like that who's in the Red Wings sphere, like his insight on everything that's going on. It really is a special thing. And, hopefully going forward in the future, we can have the other two of those guys on for the Wingmill podcast. We can have more collaborations with Hockeytown West, with Grindline. I mean, we're really in a great spot right now. And I got to be honest, listening to that interview, that had me real excited for this coming season. It really did.
Same. Yeah, he made a lot of really good points about this upcoming season, and then even about the future. Fans should be excited for
Mhm.
not only right now, and I know that's tough to say because fans are a little discouraged, but you should be excited. So, Derek, takeaways.
Well, I'm like, man, I was a little upset you guys didn't wait an extra hour for me to get on because then I would have been off work finally. But I get it. No one
Sorry,
wants to
bud.
be up at midnight doing a podcast, so I guess I gotta take it how it is. But like Matt said, Ryan, all those guys on the Wingbill podcast, great guys. A lot of knowledge coming from them from the entire hockey world, especially the Red Wings itself and the organization. He had great takeaways. You guys had great questions. I was really happy listening to that, what you guys did. Again, still salty I wasn't there. I only listened to Ryan's voice probably every single week, sometimes 2 times a week.
He hears it in his dreams too.
But hey, you guys had good questions. I liked his takeaways about how the team's looking, who's going to be getting the AA, what the potential deals would be for Mo and Seider coming up. I think it was a lot of good takeaways, a lot of good back and forth with you guys. I appreciate you both for jumping on and getting with them. I appreciate Ryan for coming out and doing this, especially that late at night. So, in all, great takeaways, guys. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. No, and once again, thanks to Ryan and Hana. Honestly, that's it was great to have him on, and hopefully we can have him on again. Sounds like that there might be a possibility for that, but because he's very busy, so during his time frame, we'll be sure to get him on again. So look forward to that. So, boys, nothing else from that. Let's go ahead and jump into around the league news. First things first, Salt Lake City named host for the 2034 Winter Olympics. That was reported on Wednesday. Sweet. That's cool.
That's good for Utah.
It's been a long time since they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they had it there, and I think it's really cool. Is it because they just got a team that they're hosting it there? Is that maybe not? Reading a little too into it.
That would make a lot of sense. Yeah. Hopefully,
And
hopefully the Utah Hockey Club will have a name by then.
yeah. Still HC,
Yeah.
HC. But no, we know from past experiences, whenever Olympics come to the United States, it's not only just in that state, right? So it'll be all over the United States. I'm sure it'll be in New York. I'm sure it'll be in, California, somewhere where it's a little bit nicer weather, not super cold there, but it's the Winter Olympics for a reason. So other than that, Edmonton Oilers hire Stan Bowman as the general manager on Wednesday. It was a very interesting Wednesday. There was a lot of news, a lot of stuff happening. So, boys, yeah, Derek, you look like you got some stuff to say, so you can go first on this.
I mean, risky move, I guess, from media standpoint, from a lot of standpoints. They just got let back into the NHL and then instantly was hired that quickly, and especially the Oilers are good franchise like that. I feel like the bad blood from Chicago has not worn off. So controversial. No more I can say about that.
Yeah. Matt, real quick before I take my stance.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I don't really want to, rehash everything, get into the weeds. We've talked about the Chicago situation for a long time. They had a lot of other options out there and they went with Bowman. I don't really understand that. It's not like they were, absolutely backed into the wall of options, and he wasn't even good in Chicago. So I don't really know why they did this. Honestly, when Jeff Jackson took over, as the interim GM, when Holland left, he made some great moves, man. I mean, bringing in Jeff Skinner, getting what's his face from LA, getting Arvidsson from LA.
Arvidsson.
Yeah, I mean, they did well in the draft too. I think in a very limited sample size, he did a pretty good job stepping in as GM. So I guess the guy just didn't really want to do the job. I don't really blame him. I think it takes a certain individual to be able to be an NHL GM. That is a very high stakes, high pressure, high stress job. But yeah, Bowman definitely would not have been my first choice. I'd actually go on a limb and say he'd be my last choice. So there you go.
I understand it from the Edmonton Oilers perspective, I guess. I'm not trying to, protect Bowman in any way. I think that it was a boneheaded mistake to hire him. I don't believe he should be working in the NHL anymore. Personally, that's my own personal opinion. You can have your own personal opinion on that too. I get it from their perspective, though. He was the best candidate out there. Yes, Matt, you're correct. There were plenty of other candidates. And you're going into a Canadian market where the media is even more tough than what it is in Chicago, I'm sure. So if this doesn't go well for Edmonton, like they don't win a cup or anything, there's going to be a lot of backlash on Stan Bowman. Like, hey, you got brought back into the league after this incident, and you can't even do anything for this club, like getting them a Stanley Cup championship. So yeah, it's going to look bad on them.
Stanley Cup. I yell that at our GM every year.
But that's the reason why they went on and did it, because they felt like he was the best person to get them to where they need to be, and that's winning a Stanley Cup. And if he can't do that, then to me, I think that's an absolute failure. And then you kind of look like a laughingstock of the NHL. You went out and hired someone. And the other thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that it was reported that he called Kyle Beach the night before he got hired to tell him that he was getting hired.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is absolutely bonkers stuff. And I get it, not to shock him, but it's also shocking. Like, hey, Kyle, I'm sorry what happened to you, but I'm getting hired into the NHL again. Hope you're doing all right. It's bad to me personally. You can have your own opinion, but that's my opinion on it. So, yeah. Other than that, the Flyers did sign Travis Konechny to an 8-year, $70 million extension. That's $8.75 million AAV. The kicker of that, the first 6 years, has a no trade clause. Super yikes. This is a player who hasn't played a full healthy season since 18-19 season, I believe. I don't believe he's ever gotten 70 points either. So still kind of like in his prime though. So can Travis Konechny live up to this deal?
I feel like they're more so using him. He's probably a good glue part of that team. They're probably having him there for the camaraderie the most part. He does produce pretty well. 50, 60 points, sometimes 70-point seasons. But you're right, he's never really healthy. Always getting hurt a little bit every time in the season. And we're hoping that it's just the team itself right now, that he's surrounded with a few more good players, say a Mete Michkov, that production will probably go up exponentially as well. So maybe that's what they're betting on right now. No move clause, that hurts. That's 6 years is pretty long for a 27-year-old, but I get it. If you can get the deal in there, you might as well.
Yeah, and and you're talking about glue player, this is basically their Dylan Larkin. So Matt, take on that.
I don't really know what Philly's doing here. I mean, I just don't really know what exactly this team. They're pretty similar to Washington, where I think they think they're better than what they actually are. Like, I really don't understand what their goal is. Like, they didn't even make the playoffs last year. I think still on paper, even with this deal and Michkov coming in, I still don't think they're good enough to make the playoffs. I think they still need to get some, really consistent goaltending, and they definitely need a lot more scoring. I think they need more scoring depth. But yeah, I don't really know what to make of this team. Like, they do actually have a pretty good prospect pool, so maybe they're hoping that they can lock in Konechny. He's a big part of their future. Maybe that guy's a future captain now that he's going to be here long term. I mean, he's probably going to be a Flyer for life, right? Like, this deal is going to end when he's mid-30s maybe. And
yeah.
So, yeah, I think maybe they're just saying, like, you know what? We got this Konechny guy here. He's been consistently good for a while. Let's just keep him here and see if we can just build around him and see what happens. I don't really know what else their plan actually is.
Yeah, those types of players don't just fall off of trees, and so you got to do what you can to keep and on your team. Same, like I said, same thing with the Detroit Red Wings and Dylan Larkin at the time when we were amongst like the worst teams in the league, right? You got to pay your guy to keep him around. So time will tell if this is a good contract. I think, by the time it's done, it's going to look good, but it'll come down to his health. Like Derek and I mentioned, he hasn't really been the healthiest player in the league for quite some time. So Michkov, yeah, Derek, you kind of touched on that. So we finally get to see the Russian factor there. Does that kind of really make the difference for him? I think it will be exciting for Philly fans. I think it will be exciting for us to watch Michkov. Do I think he's going to be that huge of a difference maker to push him into the playoffs? Kind of like what Matt said. No, I don't. Anyone else on Michkov?
I mean, 41 points and what was I think like 48 games or something he played for St. Petersburg over in the KHL. One of the highest scoring rookies. I think he was the highest scoring rookie in the league this year. So it's a good sight to see, but like you guys said, it's not going to be the needle move they need to push them that amount of points up into the playoff range. They definitely need to do a little bit more on the back end there. A little surrounding, get a little more depth. A better goalie. I mean, the 6'8" goalie they had in there was terrifying, but I don't know if he's going to be the one they lead with for a while.
Yeah, I definitely think that Michkov is going to make a difference. I actually just checked FanDuel. He is the Calder favorite at plus 350. So you talk about me being the gambling guy, I got to throw one of those in there. So yeah, I definitely think that I think he has enough of a supporting cast, like you just talked about him playing with Konechny, Derek, and I do think that that's going to happen. But he was in the KHL last year. He was almost point per game. So that's a men's league, and he's almost point per game there. He's going to the NHL, also a men's league, but obviously the NHL, way higher competition than the KHL. I think we can all agree on that. But it's not like the guy's going from, whatever, the QMJHL and stepping in the NHL. Like he's been playing against men, and he's been proving that he belongs. So I don't know, man. I mean, you know me, I make the crazy future bets. I might throw some money on him to win the Calder next year. So yeah, I could definitely see him doing it.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I can't speak on Derek, but for myself, I think he will be a good player. I don't know I can't say how many points I believe he's going to get, but I don't think he's going to be that player that pushes them in the standings to make the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's going to be a Connor McDavid putting 150 points, but I do agree with you. I think that he will be a top favorite for the Calder, much like the betting odds suggest. So yeah, I think he will be impactful for the team, but not impactful in the standings where it gives him that extra push.
How about this, fellas? Over under 50 points in the NHL next year? I'm going over, slightly over.
I'm going under.
I'll match you, Matt. I'll go over 50 points. I think that's doable.
Now, how about this? Is anybody here? We're all going to be playing each other in fantasy. Anybody going to take them in fantasy?
I made that mistake with Bedard. I'm not doing that again.
Okay, fair enough. He's like, I already tried that. It doesn't work.
And he was a lot better. So no.
Right.
Well, it didn't help that Bedard got injured either. But yeah, in terms of answering your question, Matt, I don't know. Maybe definitely a late round pick player for sure. Because you hope that he gets 50 points, but that's someone that not trying to go too in depth about fantasy hockey, but yeah, we will be doing fantasy hockey, which is fun. That's it for around the league news. That's pretty much it. That wraps up today's episode. Final thoughts, boys?
My final thoughts, as always, are let's go Red Wings, and everybody listening out there, go see Twisters. It is awesome.
Derek?
Honestly, Matt, I thought you were lying when you said it was a good movie. So now I'm starting to think it might be good. I thought it was a spoof movie, so I don't really know.
I heard it was good too from other people.
If I didn't like the movie, I would not tell you to go see it. It was very good.
See if I can convince Sarah to go see something called Twister. I think I'm shit out of luck with that one, but let's go Red Wings. Hopefully, some stuff happens here shortly. I feel like we only 2 months away, and we need some stuff to very much happen. Yes, what Zach's pointing at when you can see his fingers, that's basically what I'm talking about right now. So hopefully some moves happen here shortly with that, and they're very hometown friendly deals, even though they're not from Michigan, but they want to stay here. It's okay.
Great final thoughts. My final thoughts are go Red Wings. Derek, go see Twister. Sarah, go see Twister with your boyfriend. Matt, glad you loved the movie. Ryan, Hannah, thank you so much once again for hopping on. Carlo, we miss you. Sorry you couldn't finish out this episode with us. But for my final thoughts, continuing on, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, follow us on Spotify, and then you can follow us on Apple Podcasts as well. And from here, we'll see y'all on the next one. See ya.
Bye, y'all.